Palestinians cannot go by dialoguing with these people through other international bodies.
Straight talk, no holds barred.
That's what Hamas did, and Hamas say they didn't do it, but Hamas lied.
You contradict what America's report, you contradict Israel's report.
The Liberation Organization died. The children, they will rise up tomorrow and fight for liberty.
Biggest conversations from around the world. Borderlines with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Fridays at 4 p.m. Let's talk.
And it's a good afternoon, Lagos, Nigeria. Wherever you're listening to us from, I'm talking about the US, the UK, Israel. I know now. Now we have listeners in Israel. And I know we have listeners in the US because my special guest is in the US, but I'm not going to introduce him yet. He's pretty much a friend of the house, so you know how we like to inherit families on Borderline. So, about 2 weeks ago, I think it was, I had a guest, Eylon Levy, the former Israeli government spokesperson. Controversial, as you all know, all over the world. He's speaking to many network. I think he was a little bit surprised at my nice welcome, but that's what we do here on Borderlines. Doesn't cost us anything to be nice. But he did say a lot of things. Okay. And I have with me a friend of the house, as I said. Okay. He is a composer, an author. He's a mental chiropractor. I bet you're thinking, what is a mental? You can go and Google. You know, I keep telling you, Google is your auntie. She's a friend to all. But more importantly, he is the co-host of The Bad Hasbara. Notice what I said, The Bad Hasbara podcast. His name is Daniel Maté. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, Ireti. It's great to see you again.
It's good to see you even more so, right? You're a friend of the house. You're part of the family now. We come to you when we need clarification, when things are said. That if you're looking, okay, we're streaming live on YouTube. We're streaming live on Facebook. We are on WhatsApp 080959758505. You will want to send questions as I continue with Daniel. We are also on the website nigeriainfo.fm, and the phone number you can get us on is 0201 277 0993. The reason I said that is you may have seen Daniel giggle, wiggle, snigger. I don't know what that was just a few minutes ago. Daniel, so I had your best friend in Nigeria. That's what we say. We don't like to say your enemy, because if we say your enemy, they'll say we're putting words in your mouth or something. So we had your best friend, Eylon Levy, on our show 2 weeks ago, and he said a whole load of things. I know you've heard that. Just sort of give me, how should I say, a round reflection before we start going into details of what your thoughts are by the end of that 1 hour interview.
Well, I mean, I think Eylon, who has just promptly blocked me this morning on both Instagram and Twitter, which is strange behavior for a best friend.
Ooh la la.
But, in response to your tweeting that he's welcome to come on and debate me sometime, he
Yes.
had a pretext for not doing so. What can I say? I think he's very good at what he does. The question is, what is the thing he does? And you know, he was doing it professionally, at least, you know, under the employ of the government of Israel for a while until they fired him. And now he's doing it freelance, and I can see that he's making he's making a go of it independently, and that is a professional. The official term for it is spokesperson, but that's to say it's a propagandist for a regime. And I don't care what government you're a spokesperson for, whether self-employed or employed by them directly. The job of a government spokesperson is to lie. There is no government on the planet that needs spokespeople if those people aren't employed to spin things and basically try to convince people that what they're seeing in front of their eyes is not reality. And he's very slick at that. He's very practiced. And I was, first of all, very impressed by your, you gave him a very courteous welcome. And I know you've had him on before.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a very spirited conversation and very respectful. Nothing he said surprised me. Actually, that's not true. One thing he said surprised me. I just couldn't, because of the audacity of it, which was that Israelis feel that the world has forgotten about October 7th. The entire mainstream media in the West, the entire narrative is all about reminding us about October 7th, October 7th, October 7th. We try to talk about October 8th. They want to talk about October 7th. We try to talk about November 14th. They want to talk about October 7th. Story after story, report after report, testimonial after testimonial, reminding us of the trauma and fear and horror that Israelis felt on that day, which is very real. It's in no way am I trying to dismiss or belittle the fact that that was a calamitous day for that country, and not just for the national psyche, but I mean, for hundreds of families who lost their members, including families of people who were pro-Palestine, pro-peace advocates who lived in those kibbutzim in the south, who were indiscriminately attacked, massacred, killed. It was a horrible, horrible day for Israel, and so he's not lying there. But the notion that somehow we've forgotten about it, if anyone has been forgotten, at least in the eyes and ears of those who could do something about ending the situation, it's the tens of thousands of Palestinian victims of Israel's rampage since then. I mean, we've been stuck at a death count of somewhere in the 30,000s for about 3 or 4 months now, which tells me that several more tens of thousands have been officially forgotten about, lost from the count. I think we're living in a time when the world has seen what Israel's doing, and all someone like Mr. Levy can do is to try to play on our emotions and try to insist that the feelings of Israelis are more important than the clear moral calculus of whatever happened on October 7th. Nothing can possibly justify what Israel's has done since. But he needs to keep bringing us back to it. The horrors of that, as if it's some kind of unique, singularly evil, barbaric event in human history, which is, I think, incorrect on so many levels.
Okay.
Without, and I'm not saying that at all to discount that it was a horrific day, and it was a calamitous day for that country, and it's an understandable trauma. But the way it's being exploited and manipulated by people like him, to me, is not only offensive on the grounds of the Palestinian suffering that it raises, but it's just more exploitation of Jewish suffering, which, as the great grandson, and son of Holocaust victims and survivors, I find particularly offensive.
It's interesting. One of the things that Elon said to me when I said to him that, thank you, when I said something, I'm trying to remember, and I did present to him that, look, you say Hamas is bad, you say Hamas are terrorists, but Prime Minister Netanyahu was supporting Hamas. Prime Minister Netanyahu was giving Hamas money through Qatar. Prime Minister Netanyahu did tell the Israeli society, or if you like, politicians, that Hamas was the group to support. Elon tried to deny that, right? I did read out a quote to him.
Found the quote.
Yeah, but I would like your response on that, please.
Well, it's just one example of, you poked a little hole in the premises of his logic, and he got very flustered. He said, "Well, what's the quote? What did he exactly say?" And then you went and promptly got the Times of Israel quote, and you quoted it at length, and then he sort of deflected to something else. The truth is that Hamas is the big bad wolf for Israel. It's the new big bad wolf. It used to be the PLO, Yasser Arafat, and until he became pliant enough to negotiate with the Oslo Accords, which were a very defanged kind of peace process, which really offered the Palestinians very little. But in the meantime, back when the PLO was the big bad wolf, guess who Israel was helping to create and fund? Hamas. Israel was much more amenable, and now we're talking back in the 1980s, to a hardline Islamist militant Palestinian faction than they were to a secular, moderate group that, yes, had committed acts of armed resistance or terror or whatever you want to call it to try and free Palestine. But ultimately, we're coming around to wanting to negotiate on the two-state principles of UN Resolution 242. Israel couldn't have that. And it was outwardly said that one Israeli scholar, I believe, called it the Palestinian peace offensive. It was actually the threat of a Palestinian leadership that would want to negotiate with Israel, because Israel didn't want a negotiated settlement. And this is, one of the things Elon said is, or Elon, I'm sorry, Elon. I don't want to confuse him with Elon Musk. If we're just still waiting for a Palestinian leader who wants to negotiate. Well, they've been saying that for 50 years. The old one of that was, the Palestinians an opportunity, saying that a child since I was an infant. This is always a line, and it's a very racist line, which is that the Palestinians don't want peace. Always say only American king. The Palestinian leaders are want to see in jail. In fact, who has advocated negotiations in good faith for a two-state solution. There are, and if you want to see what happens to Palestinians who try to resist nonviolently, try to do the nonviolent Martin Luther King approach, just look at what happened in the Great March of Return a few years ago in 2018, 2019, when Israeli snipers had contests of how many Palestinian knees and ankles they could shatter with their bullets, while Palestinians in droves walked peacefully towards the border wall, which is the gate, that's the fence of their concentration camp, as they walked towards the territories from which they and their descendants had been expelled in 1947-48. So this notion that Israel's just waiting for a peaceful Palestinian partner for peace is one of the most classic, venerable lines of Israeli propaganda, Israeli Hasbara. It's very tired, it's very played out, and he trotted it out there. But the truth is, as you said, and it's an inescapable truth, that Israel has always preferred to have a fractured Palestinian people rather than unified under the banner of a secular, moderate leadership who would want to negotiate with Israel, and for a very good reason, because the law is on the Palestinian side there. The Palestinians have the right to their own state. I mean, they have the right to much more than that. In fact, they have the right to return. All the refugees from 1948, technically, according to international law, have the right to return to the homes from which they were forcibly expelled and deliberately ethnically cleansed, right? So the threat of a moderate secular leadership is very real for Israel. That's why they've always preferred Hamas. And then they get to blame big bad Hamas whenever they choose to. They can go in and justify their regular mowings of the lawn, which is what Israel calls its perennial massacres in Gaza in 2014, 2007, maybe 2008. I'm forgetting the exact dates, but all these various operations that sound like condom brands, Operation Protected Edge, Pillar of Defense, Iron Dome, Iron Shield, cast lead. These very manly sounding prophylactic operations, which are in fact, that I'm being funny, but what they are is ritual blood sacrifices of Palestinian lives, destruction of homes, displacing of hundreds of thousands of people. It's no joke. And Hamas is the pretext for that. So, of course, Israel wants Hamas in power.
Okay. I'm going to play you. There was one of the points that we discussed was it was to do with Hamas not accepting. Well, he said Hamas didn't accept the ceasefire. If I may just play you the voice note from what he said, and I'd like a response.
Hamas did not, unfortunately, accept the ceasefire proposal. I wish they had. We had a deal on the table that was supposed to get a temporary pause in the fighting and for us to get 33 live hostages back. Hamas said, we're not going to give you 33 live hostages. We'll give you 33 hostages alive or dead, which could mean that they want to give us the bodies of 33 hostages they have murdered or starved or allowed to die in captivity. Now, Israel is committed to getting all the hostages back so their families can bury them with dignity, but we want to get the live hostages out. And right now, Hamas is refusing to give back the live hostages.
I'd like your... Did you get to hear that? I'd like your response to that,
did.
please, Daniel.
I did. Well, look, I have to be...
you can be blunt if you want.
Well, I want to be blunt, but I should also be modest that I don't have all the
Details.
minutia of the details of the at the disposal, at the disposal of my memory. I do know that Israel has rejected many ceasefire offers, and that some of these so-called ceasefire offers were basically saying to Hamas, look, temporary pause, you give us all the hostages, and then a month from now we'll resume bombing if we want to. Well, that's not how you negotiate with hostage takers. Anyone who's seen a Hollywood movie understands what a hostage situation is. The only reason they took hostages is to get some leverage. Leverage for what? They want their people out of Israeli prisons. The thousands of Palestinian men, women, and children abducted from their homes in the middle of the night with no recourse to lawyers or any, much less a trial, held in administrative detention for months upon months upon months, sometimes years on end without any charge. Well, that's the whole point of Hamas taking hostages. And I'm not saying anything about the moral justification of taking hostages. I'm talking about the tactical consideration of it. And we're talking about negotiations here. So you have to deal with brass tacks and tactics. So I know that Israel will paint its ceasefire offers as some sort of generous, magnanimous offer. But in fact, if you look at them, from what I've seen, they're all offers, in The Godfather, make him an offer you can't refuse. These are offers Hamas can't accept by definition. They're not going to give up their entire leverage here just so that Israel can extract their hostages, not release any Palestinian captives, and then resume the bombing campaign, which is the whole point, whenever Israel wants to. And if you want to talk about alive or dead, Netanyahu said, we're going to invade Rafah with or without a hostage deal, which means, and that tells you everything you need to know. So Hamas is supposed to make this deal with Israel, release all the hostages, and Netanyahu's saying, yeah, we're still going to invade this Rafah refugee camp with 1 point whatever million people there, and we're going to commit as much vengeful murder as we want, whether or not you give us our hostages. Who would negotiate with that? Israel always loved to say you can't negotiate with terrorists. Well, the logic goes both ways, and Israel's logic is the logic of a terrorist state. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And as far as the specifics of the deal he's talking about, I don't have those details at my disposal, but I do know that the entire premise of his argument places Israeli goodwill and good intention as a given, and at the center, and Israeli subjectivity at the center of any understanding we're supposed to have, meanwhile completely being unwilling to even for a second think about it from the perspective of, oh, what if the Palestinians are human too? What if they have national aspirations too? What if they have human rights too? What if they have critical minds of their own too and can analyze whether or not their opponent is negotiating in good faith? And what if they're in a position of drastically less power and privilege in this world, not just within the conflict, but in terms of how much support both sides get from powerful entities in the world.
Thank you. Yeah.
Even if you want to take Iran into account, we're talking about the entire West. We're talking about the U.S. We're talking about the deck being stacked radically against the Palestinian side. So I'm certain that on the merits of the facts he's talking about, he's not telling the truth, although I don't have the requisite specific facts at my disposal to specifically debunk it. But I know that his entire logic is, to use the Hebrew word, dafuk, which means just upside down, backwards, inside out.
Brilliant. Now, as we got to the end of the show, my conversation with Elon, one of the things that I asked him, and of course, Israel will always say they want peace. They want to live in peace.
Of course.
Palestinians will tell you they want to live in peace. So, of course, we get to a point of discussing peace. And I made a suggestion to him. I would like you to listen to this and then give us your response, please. And then we can move on to today's incredible development.
If you were to have one state between the river and the sea, it would be a state that would be majority Arab.
What's wrong with that?
The Jewish citizens of Israel, that the Jewish citizens of Israel, who are currently free members of a liberal democratic state, that with all its flaws is by far the freest and most liberal country for thousands of miles away, should be vulnerable minorities in the hands of a Palestinian movement that has made very clear that we have no right to live here at all. It would be a recipe for mass political violence against Jews and Israelis. That is why we say, as Israel, we want to be able to separate from the Palestinians. Israel's official policy is, we want to give the Palestinians all of the rights to govern themselves, but none of the rights to threaten us, because the most important thing for us is literally, how do we stay alive? Okay. How do we keep ourselves safe in a region surrounded by people who want to kill us? And I truly believe, and I have hope, I really do have hope after October 7th, that one day we will find a Palestinian leader who is brave enough to say that the Jewish people have a right to live and to have a state of their own in their ancient homeland, and they want to live next to Israel and not instead of it. Okay. And on the day that we have a Palestinian leader who's able to say that, I truly believe we'll be able to make peace with our neighbors.
Right. I also went on then to say to him, how about making everybody one state, that is giving Palestinians the right in Israel, everybody being part of one state, one passport, with equal rights. He also dismissed that. So I'd like your response, please.
Well, there's so much to respond to. I have to even think, where would I want to start? I mean, your observation off the top that everyone talks about peace, it reminds me of that Peter Tosh song, Equal Rights, where he says, everybody's crying about peace, ain't nobody crying about justice. I don't want no peace. Give me equal rights and justice, because without equal rights and justice, there is no actual peace. It's Martin Luther King's classic thing about the idea of positive peace, which is the presence of justice, versus negative peace, which is the absence of outright conflict. Now, being the powerful entity here, being the one with the power, even though Elon wants to paint Israel as the scrappy little underdog, that's always been its core Hasbara pretense. Israel is the one with the power and the backing of the most powerful empire in the world. And so when the powerful get to dictate what peace means, it means that the powerless are going to be subject to a regime where peace is contingent on their oppression and subjugation. It means, stay quiet underneath our boot. So when Palestinians hear that kind of peace talk, they understand full well what that means on the ground. Materially, that's not peace. That's prolonged occupation or supremacy of some kind. And he lays it out very well. He says, look, we want to give the Palestinians all the rights to govern themselves, but none of the rights to threaten us. Well, what does that mean actually on the ground? It means something less than a Palestinian state, right? So he's trying to make it sound as if we want a two-state solution. First of all, the Likud government, which he's been running interference for, going to bat for, he can say he's not a Likudnik, but he's full-throatedly endorsing the policies of that government. Their charter, if you look at it, it's more eliminationist and what can I say? Can I say? It's more extreme than Hamas's charter currently is. Hamas says our beef isn't with the Jews, it's with the Zionists. But Hamas has indicated at various times willingness to have negotiations along the internationally recognized borders. Likud charter explicitly says from the river to the sea. They actually basically use that language. There will be no Palestinian state. This is all Jewish land. Okay?
Yeah.
So Israel's self-conception already is a one-state solution. It's just a one-state, either apartheid solution, which is what we currently have, or it's an exterminationist policy of ethnically cleanse them, get them out so it can be all Jewish or majoritarian Jewish. B'Tselem, which is the Israeli human rights organization, the Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories, put out a report a couple of years ago talking not about some future situation, but the status quo, what it is now. And I believe the exact title was A Regime of Jewish Supremacy from the River to the Sea, which is to say, Israel is an apartheid regime. You can't neatly separate Israel proper, 1948 Israel, from the West Bank, from Gaza. Israel effectively controls all of it, just in different ways. And there's these different tiers of life within, here's T-I-R-S, of Palestinian life within these different territories, right? You have the Palestinians of Gaza who are been immured in what an Israeli general, Giora Island, called a big concentration camp, what Baruch Kimmerling, the Israeli sociologist in 2000 before the siege, called the biggest concentration camp to ever exist. Then you have the Palestinians of the West Bank who are living under military occupation, whose movement is completely controlled, who every aspect of their lives is under the aegis of a foreign military army. They are tried under military law. They have no rights. They have no passports. They have these ID cards. And they live at the whims of this Kafkaesque regime that can stop them anytime they want, throw them in jail, take them out of their homes, seize their homes under the eminent domain law, bulldoze them, and then charge the Palestinians for the privilege of having their homes destroyed. All kinds of indignities. And then you have the Palestinian citizens of Israel who, yes, do exist within this liberal democratic society that Elon is so proud of, and they exist pretty much as second, or you could even say third-class citizens if you want to place the second-class citizenship as the dark-skinned Arab and African Jews of, that are known as the Mizrahi Jews, the Sephardic Jews, the Yemeni Jews, the Somali Jews. There's and you can read within Israeli society, this is a long-standing struggle for equality, even within Jewish Israeli society. Never mind the Palestinians, the descendants of the people who were ethnically cleansed, the ones who remain did get to be citizens. But the whole point of the Israeli state creating itself in 1948 was to make sure that it was a very definite minority that remained. That was the whole point of the ethnic cleansing operation. So yes, those people do exist, and they're a useful talking point for someone like Elon, who can say, look, we're so democratic, we're so equal, we have a pluralistic society. I've gone off on one particular thread because there were so many threads.
There was so many, but we mustn't use up all the time on Elon, because it's been an amazing 2 weeks. So much has changed. Let's talk about that 100. Now we have, I think it's 140 to 143 countries that now recognize Palestine. What are your thoughts on that at the UN? At least 3 European countries this week, including Spain.
Yeah, Spain, Norway, and Ireland.
And Ireland, yes.
Yeah, look, I'm not an international affairs expert. I'm actually very limited in terms of what I'm good at. If anything, I'm a media critic. I'm a savvy consumer of media, and if I provide anything for people, it's some kind of what Noam Chomsky used to call a course of intellectual self-defense, a way to protect yourself against the propaganda, a way to keep yourself I call it intellectual antioxidants, you know, so that you don't get.
But Daniel, you are how can I say, you are an activist in this space, right? You are
active.
a campaigner.
I don't know if I'm an active.
You are a campaigner for
to
peace.
reserve the word. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be falsely modest, but I also want to be responsible and self-aware enough to say that I tend to reserve. People can call me an activist if they want. I like to reserve the word activist for people who are on the ground, people who are putting their bodies on the line, people who have something to lose. All right, I'm in a very privileged position. When Zionists tell me, "Oh, you privileged Brooklyn," you know, Jew sitting there at a remove criticizing, you're right. I am sitting in a place of privilege. So what am I good at? What I'm good at is cutting through the bullshit and helping people filter out and understand the ways in which someone like Elon Levy is quite skilled, but I think his skills are losing their edge as more people wake up to it, quite skilled at diverting, deflecting, and confusing people. So in terms of the recognition of all of that said, that caveat said, what can I say? I would leave it up to Palestinians themselves to say whether or not it's a good thing. I saw one Palestinian commentator, Noor Erakat, I believe it was, a human rights lawyer, very, very sharp observer of all of this, an activist, a true activist, say that, look, it's on the one hand, it's nice to have countries recognize Palestine, but right now there's no prospect of an independent Palestine. What we really need is countries to be sanctioning Israel and disempowering Israel and weakening the regime that's keeping us from having a free Palestine. Until then, everything else is symbolic. So I can understand that perspective. At the same time, maybe it's a moral victory, maybe it's a political victory to have these recognitions, which is also why when you posted the graphic about this conversation between you and me, and it said the one state option, I blanched a little because I'm like, it's not for me to decide whether there's a one state or a two state option. I definitely think Israel has deliberately kiboshed the two state option over many, many years. Netanyahu has said he's very proud that he's prevented a two state solution from taking place, which is what Elon says he wants. But in fact, Israel does not want that. As far as a one state option, look, there's all kinds of problems with that too. I was talking to an Israeli friend yesterday, and a very strong activist against apartheid, against the occupation, who said, look, here's what I want positively. I want Palestinians to have exactly the same rights and privileges as I do. I want the regime of separation, which is what Elon was advocating, and in Hebrew the word is hafrada. And here's the funny thing. Zionists will tell you that to call it an apartheid system is anti-Semitic and incorrect. Never mind the fact that many South African veterans of the apartheid movement, Desmond Tutu included, have said that what the Palestinians are living under is worse than the apartheid they suffered. But never mind that. What does the word apartheid literally mean? Apartness, aka separation, aka hafrada, which is what Elon says we want. We want to separate from them. Okay, great. So just admit it. You want apartheid. But my Israeli friend was saying, look, I just want them to have the same rights as I do, right? Now, in my mind, if I try to extrapolate, well, what does that mean on the ground? My mind immediately goes to a state, a federated state, where two peoples live and, there's some kind of shared sovereignty, inequality. What Elon's talking about is a situation where you have something less than a state living alongside of Israel, something without an army, something that doesn't control its own airspace.
Yeah, it doesn't have an airport.
That doesn't have an airport, So basically what he's saying to Palestinians is, we're waiting for some leader among you to come along who's subservient enough to us to sell out their people sufficiently to give us permanent dominion over you while calling what you have sovereignty. Well, in South Africa, there were a word for these semi-sovereign areas, Bantustans, areas where the Africans, the black Africans, can control their own affairs, but we're going to control their controlling of it. We're going to, and that's the kind of arrangement Israel's had with the Palestinian Authority since the Oslo Accords. Israel is the military occupier, and they have the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian police doing their dirty work. But the Palestinian police aren't allowed to go protect Palestinian families when illegal Jewish settlers come and terrorize them in the middle of the night. It's the Israeli army that shows up, and guess what the Israeli army does? It protects the settlers. So anything short of what my Israeli friend said, which is, and I don't care what you call it, 1 state, 2 state, 3 states, no states. Sounds like a Dr. Seuss book. Anything that isn't premised on full Palestinian equality, and I don't mean the right to vote, right? For the Palestinian citizens of Israel. If you gave all the Palestinian residents of the West Bank, Gaza, and 48 Israel the right to vote, Elon's right. You wouldn't have a Jewish state anymore. You'd have a pluralistic binational state. And his Jewish supremacist ideology can't countenance that. And I'm not a Jewish supremacist. And I think Jewish supremacy is bad for Jews, not just for Palestinians. I think the Zionist mentality that we need to create our own little ghettoized country that is walled in and walled up and protected militarily and has to kick out whoever doesn't belong there so that we can be the majority, and whoever doesn't belong there is the native population. I think this is corrosive to Jewish morality, Jewish intellect, Jewish spirituality, all the things that make being Jewish great. And so whatever the solution is, it has to be premised on full equality, justice, and equal rights, like Peter Tosh said.
I know you said you're not an activist, and of course, as a liberal, you are very careful as to not to dictate to anybody as to what should happen in their country.
Please don't call me a liberal. Please don't call me a liberal.
Okay,
I'm somewhere to the far left extreme of liberal.
Okay, well, I like to call myself like a sort of a center. So I don't know where you like to call yourself here. I'm a center. So
also, these terms mean different things in different contexts.
Absolutely.
You're in Nigeria.
Absolutely. So, but I do have to ask for your opinion on something. So the last week.
Opinions I have.
Yes, that's
Opinions
what we want. That's what we want.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know anything, but
something
I think
incredible. The other incredible thing that happened was Prosecutor Khan said he was going to be seeking for a warrant for Prime Minister Netanyahu and his military Minister of Military Forces, or whatever the correct thing is, and also for Yahya Sinwar, right? And his deputy. Now, here's the thing. The really sort of, if you like, poetic thing about that is that to have Yahya Sinwar juxtaposed with Netanyahu, and the immediate response from Israel, the response from America, the fact that it seems like a whirlwind. How incredible. I mean, I did say to somebody, this is groundbreaking. Nobody could ever have predicted that Netanyahu, even in his wildest dreams, would be on the same list as, next door, written next to Polar, the extension of Yahya Sinwar. What are your thoughts on that really sort of eponymous moment?
Yeah, well, look, history is written in the future from now, so we don't know what the significance will be. All we can know is we are living through historic times when something like this can happen. I don't know what the significance will be. I mean, I'd say more power to the ICC. I would love to see Netanyahu locked up. He amply deserves it. Same thing with the ICJ. I don't know what's going to come of the apartheid case, but the fact that it's happening, you're right. We couldn't have foreseen this, and it's a long time coming. Because international law has long been on the Palestinian side. It's just been there's no application of the law. In 2004, the World Court ruled on the legality of the apartheid wall, or the security fence. Israel calls the security fence, right? And they said, ipso facto, every inch of that wall is illegal to the extent that it cuts through actual Palestinian territory. You're allowed to build a fence on your actual border, but Israel has no internationally recognized borders with Palestine. It's a military occupation. They also ruled on the settlements. They're illegal. They ruled on the status of East Jerusalem. that Israel's de facto annexation of East Jerusalem is illegal. But these legal rulings have proven completely ineffective because Israel enjoys this diplomatic immunity thanks to the United States, and international legal bodies have been rather toothless. Well, they're growing some teeth, So these moments, not just symbolically, but in terms of shifting the discourse and shifting the perception of Israel, Israel is, I would say, firmly now in the camp of a pariah state. I think it's there, and I think it's there to stay. And I think that's why someone like Elon will never run out of work, because he's going to have to work really hard to try and battle the flood of opprobrium that's going to be coming at Israel, because the world now sees what Israel is. It's gone fully to the dark side. And so the fact that these arrest warrants are out, I don't know what's going to come of them. I don't know what the enforcement mechanism is. If I was Netanyahu, I wouldn't be taking any trips to European countries.
Well, it's interesting.
I wouldn't want to go, to the Alps on a skiing vacation.
Indeed, it's interesting because Germany has already said if that warrant is issued, they will abide by it, which is quite incredible given that Germany has been a major ally of Israel. But here's the thing: something happened.
That is shocking to me. I'd have to read. I'd have to find out how it is that. I mean, if that's true, if did Germany actually say that?
Yes, they've said they will abide. But if that warrant is because you have to, if that warrant is eventually issued, they have to abide by it. Now, whether Prime Minister Netanyahu or Israel is now speaking to Germany around the back saying, look, mate, just ignore them, say what you want to do, but we have a way of getting around the back.
I don't know. I do want to say that as far as the offense that the U.S. and Israel are taking that Netanyahu is being placed in the same category as Sinwar, I agree with them. It's completely and totally offensive. It's a completely outrageous comparison. Netanyahu is by far the bigger mass murderer, and it's if I was Sinwar, I'd be completely insulted. And I'm not saying that Sinwar is some kind of hero or that he doesn't have blood on his hands, but in terms of any time you want to talk, I mean, several years ago, my father said on the Piers Morgan show in a clip that went kind of viral, say anything you want about Hamas, take it, multiply it by 10,000, not 10,000, I think he said 1,000. Let's not be outrageous. 1,000. And it still won't capture the quantitative and qualitative record of atrocities that Israel has racked up. And it's just true. Israel has had much more time and means and diplomatic and military support from powerful interests to commit the sorts of atrocities that they love flinging around accusations about. So but I think it was a smart move to pair those two up and be like, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, you're both on the docket. You're
both facing the wall, as mother would say.
That's right, facing the wall. I like that.
Yeah. So another thing that did happen this afternoon, incidentally, before I got into the studio, was the United Nations top court has ordered Israel to and I'm quoting now, to immediately halt its military offensive in Rafah. In its request to the International Court of Justice, South Africa accused Israel of using forced evacuation orders in the southern Gaza city to endanger rather than protect civilian lives. Israel rejected the allegations. Now, the ICJ has said, Israel, stop. You've just got to stop. One, do you think Israel's going... I know you all want to talk to Daniel. You can send in a message. Please send it to your WhatsApp. We don't have much time. I promise this is my last question, and then I will come to you. All right, I'll share.
Yeah, I'd love to get some questions from listeners.
They always want to take over.
Do I think Israel's going to comply?
Do you think they're going to comply? Yes. Do you think they're going to comply? And how significant is this? If you couldn't die in 2 minutes, then I'll let you talk to your audience, right?
I can say it in 30 seconds. The truth is I have no idea. There's no evidence to suggest. I've never seen Israel comply with anything except when Big Daddy, Uncle Sam, tells them to. So I don't know, but I mean, the U.S. has contempt for the UN. So, yeah, I can't say. I can't prognosticate as to what Israel's going to do. I don't know what weight this ruling carries. But again, it's just another example of another blow to Israel's claim that somehow law is on their side. And, it bolsters their case that, international law is against us. Well, you know what? I'm actually happy to have Israel in the position of saying international humanitarian law is against us. The whole world is against us. That's exactly right. And so now we get to choose sides. Which side are you on? International humanitarian law and the people of the world? It's like the World Kitchen, the World Central Kitchen head, Jose, what was his name, said this isn't a war against Gaza, it's a war against humanity. And that's basically where we're at. And Israel's placing itself on one side and saying, choose a side, and the world is choosing sides.
Now, look, we seem to be having a problem with our WhatsApp. Zainab is trying to sort it out. You can call now, and I promise, because Daniel wants to speak to you, 0201 277 0993. 0201 277 1993. 0201 277 2993. 0201 277 3993. I understand the other line is not working. Right, I'm coming to you. You're calling now. I'm coming to your calls. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good afternoon. What's your name? Where are you calling from, please?
I'm Samuel. I'm calling from Magodo.
Go ahead, Samuel.
I want to ask your guest.
Daniel. His name is Daniel.
All right, Daniel. I want to ask Daniel. No, the conflict between Israel and the Palestine, when did it start? You go back to, I think it started when Israel became a nation.
It's 76 years ago. I need you to hurry up because the lines have now gone crazy.
Now, did Israel ever occupy that land any time in history? Or they just came from the blues and appeared there?
What do you mean? What do you mean? Hold on.
Right. I understand the question.
Okay, all right.
Let me see if I can
heard you.
Just for the sake of time.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think what you're asking me is it just a case of that this is just a 76-year-old conflict, or do the Jews not have some claim to that land going back thousands of years?
Yes.
So look,
before
Jews.
Yes. Listen
so when
to
you say
him. Listen, please.
So when you
go ahead, Daniel.
So when you say Israel, there's the people of Israel and the ancient kingdom of Israel, and then there's the modern state of Israel. They're not the same thing. They're not the same entity. Okay, it's not like the old corporation and a new name. This is, they chose the name of the ancient kingdom for a reason, right? It's the same brand name. But
I don't agree.
It's a whole new.
Well, you're not yet to agree. You've asked your question. You have to stay listening because the lines are ringing. No. The lines are ringing. Hold on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Right. The lines are ringing literally. You've asked him a question. He has answered you. You don't have to accept.
I haven't quite finished. I haven't quite finished my answer. It deserves a fuller answer, but I'm not going to be able to. I'm not going to be able to go back and forth with you, Samuel. I can't hear you well enough.
Yeah, go ahead, Daniel. Just finish that, and then I'll pick up another call.
So, what Zionists want you to think is that this is in fact an ancient enmity between peoples. It's a religious war. It's a complete lie. First of all, yes, it's true that Jews have a long history there. I personally know Jews whose families have been in Jerusalem for 10 generations. Jews have always lived in that land, and they lived but they weren't European Jews living in that land. They weren't Jews who looked like me. They were Jews of that region. Arab Jews, Arabic-speaking Jews, Aramaic-speaking Jews.
I'm going to interrupt you.
And they lived.
Quickly hurry up because there's another line going, and they all want to speak with you. Hello?
All right, I'll just wrap it up quickly. Okay.
Hello.
The modern Israel-Palestine conflict is a result of the Zionist plan and practice of colonizing that land and kicking Palestinians off their land. That's the current conflict. You don't need to go back further than 100 years.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Right, who's on the line, please? Give us your name, where you're calling from, and your question, please.
Okay, I'm calling from Turle. So I just want to ask you guys that does it feel like the ICJ are trying to play a fair game by also seeking warrants for the Hamas leaders?
Sorry, say that again, please.
I'm asking, does it feel like the ICJ are trying to play a fair game by also seeking warrant. I'm asking.
Okay, I get your question. Okay, all right, thank you, Temitokwe. 1 second, Daniel, I'll pick up one, and then what that question Temitokwe was asking is, do you think that the ICJ were trying to play a balanced, fair game by also saying they are seeking for a warrant for the arrest of Hamas? Let me just answer. Oh,
yes,
you've gone. I'm
I
so
think,
sorry.
I think
Go ahead.
Yes, and I think whether you want to say it's on the merits of justice or tactically, is a smart move. Why not?
Yeah.
Hamas is hated anyway. Issue the warrants to them. But the big news is they issued warrants for the arrests of the prime minister and defense minister of this country that's had legal immunity for so long. I mean, that Israel has a lot more to lose by those warrants than Hamas does.
Indeed. You can call now, whoever you were earlier. Sorry, I couldn't get to you. Quickly enough is 0201 277 0993 277 1993. Okay, I'm coming now. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Your name and where you're calling from and your question, please.
My name is Cosmos. I'm calling from Lagos here.
Okay, what's your question, Cosmos?
Is there no solution to this problem?
Okay.
This war, every...
Thank you. I get the question. Thank you. Cosmos wants to know, is there no solution to this problem? That's what he's saying. You can still call 0201 277 0993. There's also 277 1993, 277 2993, 277 3993. I'm coming up. Daniel, write those questions down so I can try and squeeze in as many, because they're now all calling. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, good afternoon. What's your name and where you calling from, please?
Scotland.
I beg your pardon? Oh, government. I can't hear you. The line is bad.
Okay, my question.
I'm afraid I can't hear you. You'll have to call back. So the last question we had was, is there no end? I think that was an exasperation. Cosmos said, is there no end to this war?
That's more of an exclamation than a question. But I will say this. Theoretically, there is a solution, which is end the occupation, grant the Palestinians equal rights, end Israeli legal diplomatic immunity, end military aid to Israel, compel Israel to obey the law, international law, and get its boot off the neck of the Palestinians. And from there, a negotiated settlement, whatever it looks like, 2 states, 1 state, that's the start of a solution. Now, your question, is there no solution? The problem is that solution doesn't look likely because Israel has absolutely no interest in it. And the U.S. critically, and the U.S., we haven't mentioned the U.S. enough in this conversation.
We haven't.
The United States is the main driver of the continuation of this conflict, and the military-industrial complex that profits off it likes it that way. So as long as the U.S. government doesn't
the lines are going.
compel Israel to end it, then no, there is no solution until that time. But in theory, yes, there is a solution: justice and equal rights.
Excellent, thank you. Hello. Hello. Yes, your name, where you're calling from, and your question, please.
Scotland.
Sorry.
Man.
I can't hear you.
All right, my question. My question.
I'm afraid we can't hear you. Hello? Okay. Sorry, you just have to try again. We've got 2 minutes because I will be needing Daniel to wrap up himself. So you've got 2 minutes. If you call now, I'm picking up the last call. Hello?
Hello, good evening, ma.
Good evening. Very quickly. Yes, your question, please.
My question is that, is it our contribution? I want to contribute.
No, question. Hello?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your name, where you're calling from, and your question, please?
This is Mr. Peter. I'm calling you from Yaba.
30 seconds, Mr. Peter. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I listened to Elon's interview with you about 2 weeks ago.
Correct.
And one thing he said was that he didn't want a one-state solution where the Jews will be dominated by the Palestinians.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I played it earlier. What's your question?
Yes, I want your guest, Mr. Daniel, to speak on that situation. Would he want a situation where he will be dominated by another people?
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. So I don't consider the presence of I don't consider the presence of another people who might have demographically more than me necessarily domination, and that's theoretical. What I do know is that the Palestinians, not only the Palestinians of Israel itself, but of the West Bank and of Gaza, are being military dominated by Israel. I want an end to that. And I don't live there. I'm a Jew who lives in America, where I am a minority. Am I dominated by the Christian majority here? I don't know. The culture definitely is more prevalent than mine, but I live as a minority. Now, Israel, the whole problem with Zionism was they wanted to create a majority Jewish country in a majority Palestinian Arab land, and they took military means to do so. I think that's illegitimate. I don't think the fear of being quote unquote dominated by the majority, who are the indigenous inhabitants of that land, is justification enough to do whatever you want to do to them to make sure you get to be the majority. No, you got to find a way to live in peace, and that starts with equal rights and justice, as I've said.
Indeed. Somebody was calling it out. Look, Daniel, I've got a final question for you, and it's from my producer. Sure. So hopefully she's going to allow me 1 minute. The news is here. Gosh, what am I? Can I do this? Can we stop for a second? I need Daniel to answer this. We're out of time, but the question is, would Israel stop what they're doing if the U.S. told Israel to?
Yes.
30 seconds.
I think, yes, they would. And, there's a chance they wouldn't. And if they didn't, then we'd probably have some kind of nuclear catastrophe. I mean, there is a strain in Israeli political thinking going back to the 70s that you have to be a mad dog, be willing to show the world that you're crazy and will do anything, and you'll drag the world down with it. I'm almost quoting an Israeli politician from the 70s. I forget his name. So there is a chance, and there is enough of a fanatical right-wing, not even fringe, mainstream now in Israeli society that there are people much more extreme than Netanyahu waiting in the wings. But I think that Netanyahu is enough of a lapdog to the U.S. that if the U.S. had stopped, they would stop. And so, again, that comes back to why hasn't it stopped? Because the U.S., despite all the pageantry of concern trolling and, we've had robust conversations with our friend. No, they've basically told them we'll make a show of opposition, but really you can keep going. They've given all the 2,000-pound bombs they need to keep bombing Rafah. Even if they were to cut off the aid tomorrow, they'd have enough to go for the next month. So it's all a show. And yes, the U.S. is the key to this, I think. And that's why that's a big part of why over here, someone like me needs to be so vocal, because I'm not just sitting in the cheap seats shouting at a country across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm talking about policies that are the direct result of the tax dollars that the people of this country pay to their government.
Daniel Maté. Daniel, tell them what Hasbara means again, right? Your podcast.
Hasbara is the Hebrew word. Literally, it means explanation, but is the Israeli word for propaganda. It's not even a pejorative word in Israeli Hebrew. It just means us explaining to the world why we have to do what we do. Me and a comedian from Los Angeles, Matt Lieb, a fellow Jew for Palestinian and Israeli equality and justice, have a podcast called Bad Hasbara, Hasbara. You can find us on all the podcast platforms and on YouTube. We have wonderful guests, Palestinians, Israelis, Jews, non-Jews. It's very funny. We make light of the least light topics imaginable, and people say it's cathartic and therapeutic, and I have a lot of fun doing it, so I hope people will tune in.
That's exactly what we need, actually. Perhaps we all take ourselves, I know things are very serious, but sometimes we just need to lighten up a little bit. Daniel Maté, author, composer. Okay, before somebody asked me, what is a mental chiropractor? Very quickly, because I know somebody's going to ask.
Yeah, I love that all of these questions are just pushing the news out of the way.
I'm in trouble, by the way.
The news.
I'm so in trouble
I appreciate
now.
I'm very flattered. No, very quickly, mental chiropractic is just a term I made up to describe something I do with people. It's not real chiropractic. I take walks with people and I help them get their minds unstuck. It's like a it's like a chiropractor for your mind to help align the mind as if the mind was a spine. When we get out of alignment, we get stuck, we get uncomfortable, we get stymied by parts of our lives. And it's not therapy. It's a much quicker kind of intervention to say, okay, you're stuck. What do we need to adjust in the spine of your mind to get you unstuck? And that's at walkwithdaniel.com. And I do it with people all over the world by phone.
Thank you so much, Daniel. We're going to have you back, and we're going to try and convince Elon to come and debate. But even if he doesn't, you're a friend of the house. You're literally family of Nigeria Info. Thank you for giving up your time as usual.
It's totally my pleasure to give it up to the likes of Lagos and such a wonderful host as you.
I bet you can't remember my name. Ireti.
Ireti. That's what I said.
Well done. Thank you so much, Daniel. Regards to your dad.
I'll pass that along. Maybe he's even watching.
Okay. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
You too. Bye.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.